"Get that junk out of my showroom," Preston Vale said, loud enough for every polished shoe and tailored suit inside Lane Sterling Motors to hear. The words landed beside Logan Harper's old silver car like a slap the room could pretend was service policy. The showroom was all glass, white stone, and expensive silence, lined with luxury cars so clean they looked untouched by weather, debt, or grief. Logan stood near the front desk in a faded work jacket with his 8-year-old daughter Sophie close to his side, her small hands wrapped around a spiral notebook filled with car drawings. They had come for one thing, an old adaptive suspension sensor that no parts store in Ohio had carried, a part Logan needed so Sophie could make her school trip the next morning without the car leaning hard on turns. But the moment his car rolled through the delivery entrance and stopped between two vehicles worth more than his house, the laughter began. Preston circled the old silver machine with a showroom manager's smile and a judge's eyes. "This is not a salvage yard," he said. "Customers come here to buy excellence, not stare at a garage toy." A young salesman covered a grin. Two guests near the espresso bar turned to look. Sophie lowered her eyes, pressing the notebook against her chest as if it could shield her father from the room. Logan did not answer cruelty with cruelty. He only kept his voice steady. "I called ahead. You have the H17 compatible suspension sensor in storage. I can pay cash." Preston laughed softly. "H17 compatible? Sir, that technology is not for homemade experiments." "It is not an experiment," Logan said. "It is my daughter's ride to school." That should have been enough to make a decent room quiet. It did not. Preston stepped closer to the car, looking at the hand-finished panels, the worn seats, the scratched paint, the old tires, and the body that seemed too strange to fit any known model. "Then buy her something safe," he said. Logan's jaw moved once, but his hand stayed relaxed. Sophie looked up at him, waiting to see whether hurt would become anger. It did not. He placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "We only need the part," he said. Above them, on the glass mezzanine, Victoria Lane had just stepped out of a meeting. At 28, she had learned to read a showroom quickly, nervous employees, irritated clients, bad optics before they became headlines. She was about to tell Preston to handle it quietly when her eyes dropped to the old silver car. Not the paint. Not the dents. The front chassis geometry. The triangular weld line near the suspension mount. The impossible angle of the control arm. Victoria stopped halfway down the stairs. Owen Fletcher, her chief technical officer, noticed her expression change. "Mississippi Lane?" he asked. Victoria did not answer him. She descended the last steps slowly, no longer looking at Logan as a customer problem, but at the car as if it had walked out of a locked archive. The laughter thinned. Preston straightened. Logan remained still. Sophie held her notebook tighter. Victoria reached the floor, circled the front fender once, and looked directly at Logan. "Who built that chassis?" Before the old silver car ever crossed the polished floor of Lane Sterling Motors, it had spent most nights under a yellow shop light behind a rented house outside Dayton, Ohio. Logan Harper worked there after Sophie fell asleep, moving quietly so the clink of tools would not wake her through the thin wall between the garage and the kitchen. The place was not much to look at. A cracked concrete slab. A rolling toolbox missing one drawer. A workbench made from two old doors. A portable heater that clicked like an old clock in winter. But to Logan, it was where grief learned to become useful. After his wife passed, the world had not waited for him to catch his breath. School forms still came home. Rent was still due. Sophie still needed breakfast, clean clothes, and a father who could drive her through snow, rain, doctor visits, grocery runs, and quiet mornings when both of them missed a voice that would never answer from the next room again. The silver car had arrived as a tired shell, half forgotten behind a salvage lot fence, its paint dull, its seats torn, its frame bent by years of neglect. Sophie had been 5 then, standing beside Logan in boots too big for her feet. Is it broken? She had asked. Logan looked at the car, then at his daughter, then at the empty place in his own life he did not know how to name. Yes, he said. But broken does not mean useless. Night by night, he rebuilt it. Not for a show. Not for praise. Not for men in luxury showrooms who believed value needed a badge and a price tag. He rebuilt it because he needed something safe enough to carry his child home. He reinforced the chassis by hand, tuned the suspension so it could handle icy county roads, rewired the cabin lighting so Sophie would not be afraid during dark winter rides, and softened the passenger seat because she often fell asleep before they reached the driveway. Sophie named the car Silver because, she said, it sounded like it had a heart under all that metal. Logan had smiled and told her, maybe because it was built with one. Beneath the dashboard, hidden behind a small access panel, he fastened a metal plate he had kept from another lifetime. It was not large. It was not polished. But under the shop light, the engraving still held the past clearly enough, H-17 prototype, built by L. Harper. That plate was never meant to impress anyone. It was a promise to himself that the man he used to be had not disappeared completely. Now, standing in the luxury showroom with Preston Vale's insult still hanging in the air and Victoria Lane staring at the impossible chassis geometry, Logan felt Sophie's hand slip into his. "Daddy," she whispered, "are they going to make us leave?" Logan looked at the old silver car, then at the CEO waiting for his answer. His voice stayed quiet. "Not before the truth gets a turn." Preston Vale did not like the way Victoria Lane was looking at the old silver car. A minute earlier, the vehicle had been an embarrassment, a dusty mistake parked between two luxury models beneath white showroom lights. Now the chief executive officer herself was studying its front suspension as if the scratched fender were hiding a secret worth more than everything polished around it. "Mississippi Lane," Preston said carefully, with respect, "this is a customer service issue. I can have the part request denied and the vehicle removed through the rear entrance." Logan Harper kept one hand on Sophie's shoulder and the other relaxed at his side. He did not look like a man preparing to argue. He looked like a father measuring how much ugliness his daughter had already heard. "I only came for the sensor," he said. "Adaptive suspension, early H-series compatibility." Preston laughed through his nose. "You keep saying that like it makes this car legitimate." Sophie's fingers tightened around her notebook. Around them, the showroom glittered with things built to be admired, polished stone, glass walls, chrome trim, leather seats, silent salesmen, and customers pretending not to stare. Everything had a price. Everything had a shine. But Victoria's attention remained fixed on the front wheel where the control arms sat at an angle so precise it seemed impossible for a homemade rebuild. Owen Fletcher stepped closer, kneeling just enough to see beneath the fender without touching the car. His face changed before he spoke. "That geometry should not exist outside the H-17 files," he murmured. Preston turned sharply. "Owen." Victoria heard him. So did Logan. Sophie looked up at her father, searching his face. Logan gave her a small nod that said stay steady, even when the room is not kind. Victoria walked around the car slowly, past the worn passenger seat, the hand-finished body panels, the slightly faded paint, and the dashboard that looked old until the lines under it revealed something strangely intentional. "Mr. Harper," she said, "where did you get the front assembly?" Logan answered without pride. "I built it." Preston smiled as though he had been waiting for that mistake. "There it is." He built it. "In a rental garage, I assume. With junkyard parts and bedtime stories." A few people near the espresso bar chuckled again, but softer this time, less certain. Victoria did not smile. Owen remained near the wheel eyes narrowed in technical disbelief. "This is not a normal modification," he said. "The load path, the brace angle, the control arm clearance. It is too clean." Logan looked at him. "Clean enough to keep my daughter safe." The word settled into the showroom with more weight than any sales pitch. Victoria turned toward Preston. Get the sensor. Preston stiffened. Mississippi Lane, that part is restricted inventory. Then retrieve it under my authorization. He hesitated, and in that hesitation, Victoria saw something she had not expected: fear. Not of liability. Not of policy. Fear of what the old car might prove. Owen looked again at the wheel, then at Victoria. If this is what I think it is, he said quietly, we need the hood open. Preston's face hardened. Sophie looked at Logan. Logan looked at Victoria. Are you sure you want that in your showroom? Victoria held his gaze. I am starting to think it may be the only honest thing in it. Victoria Lane did not ask Preston for permission again. She looked at Logan Harper and gave a single nod. The showroom seemed to tighten around that gesture. Customers stopped pretending not to watch. Salesmen held their tablets without tapping them. Sophie stood beside her father with her notebook pressed to her chest, her eyes moving from the old silver car to the expensive vehicles around it, as if she could feel the room deciding whether her father deserved to be heard. Logan walked to the front of the car and released the hood latch. It rose with a soft metallic breath, not dramatic, not polished, just honest. For 1 second, no one spoke. The engine bay did not look like a luxury display. There were hand-finished brackets, routed wiring, reinforced strut points, custom cooling lines, and welds that carried the small imperfections of human hands. But every line had purpose. Every bolt sat where stress would ask for it. Every brace seemed to answer a question before the road could ask. Owen Fletcher stepped closer and forgot to hide his reaction. That is impossible, he whispered. Preston recovered first, because pride often runs faster than truth. It is a patched-together engine bay. Clever, maybe. But still a garage build. Logan did not look at him. Most things that keep families moving are built in garages. Sophie's mouth trembled, and Logan noticed before anyone else did. He lowered his voice. You okay, Soph? She nodded, but the hurt in her face told the truth better than the word did. Victoria saw it. She saw the child trying to stay brave while strangers laughed at the one person who made her world feel safe. She saw Logan choose calm again, not because the insult was harmless, but because his daughter was watching what dignity looked like under pressure. Owen leaned over the open bay, careful not to touch anything. The triangulated weld pattern, he said. The forward load transfer brace. The suspension cradle. Mississippi Lane, this is not imitation work. Victoria's eyes followed the angles. Years of archived design meetings, acquisition summaries, and abandoned innovation reports flickered through her mind. H-17 had always been a company ghost, a prototype framework too expensive, too advanced, too threatening to the current luxury line. It existed in fragments, in internal slides, in rumors older executives dismissed when she asked too many questions. And here it was, sitting under scratched paint with a child's backpack on the passenger seat. Preston stepped in sharply. Or it is stolen work dressed up as sentimental poverty. The word stolen made Sophie flinch. Logan turned then, slowly, not angry, but clear. Be careful what you say in front of my daughter. The showroom went still. Preston smirked. Then do not bring stolen engineering into a luxury dealership. Sophie's eyes filled. Logan knelt beside her and brushed a tear from her cheek with his thumb. Cruel words are not proof, sweetheart, he said softly. They are just noise wearing a suit. Victoria heard the sentence and felt something in her judgment shift. She looked at Logan, then at the old car, then at Owen. Pull the H-17 archive. Owen nodded. Preston's face changed. And under the open hood, the old silver car sat quietly, as if it had been waiting years for someone to ask the right question. Owen Fletcher returned with a tablet in both hands, and the way he carried it made the showroom quieter before he said a word. Victoria Lane stepped beside him near the open hood while Preston Vale stood half a pace back, wearing the tight expression of a man who had expected an old file to stay buried. Logan Harper remained beside Sophie, one hand resting lightly on her shoulder, not reaching for attention, not asking the room to believe him, only waiting while the truth found its own footing. "The archive is incomplete," Owen said. "A lot of the original H-17 files were absorbed during the acquisition years ago." Preston gave a quick nod, too eager. "Exactly. Company property." Owen did not look at him. "But the geometry matches. The front cradle, the triangular weld path, the load transfer brace, even the adaptive suspension mounting angle. This car is using the original framework." Victoria's eyes moved to Logan. "Original framework from where?" Logan looked at the open hood, then at Sophie's notebook. "From a version I built before the company ever bought pieces of the project." Preston laughed, but it came out thinner than before. "Convenient." Sophie suddenly opened her notebook. Her hands trembled, but she held it up anyway. Inside were old pencil sketches mixed with her own drawings, suspension arms, chassis angles, handwritten measurements, and little hearts she had drawn beside the car she called Silver. "Daddy kept these," she said. "He said they were from before me." Logan's face softened. "Sophomore, they keep saying you stole it," she whispered. "But you drew it." The room did not move. Victoria took the notebook carefully, as if she understood that some evidence arrived wrapped in a child's trust. Owen leaned over the page and compared the sketch to the open engine bay. His voice lowered. "These match the early H-17 architecture." Preston stepped in. "A child's notebook is not proof." Logan turned toward him, still calm, but there was a steadiness now that made the air change. "Neither is your insult." The sentence was quiet. That made it land. Victoria looked at Preston. "Why are you so afraid of checking the source records?" Preston straightened. "I am protecting Lane Sterling from an intellectual property claim. Or from an old decision." Owen swiped through the archive. "There is a report from 7 years ago recommending the H-17 chassis be classified as commercially unviable." Victoria read the approval line. Her face sharpened. "You signed this?" Preston's jaw tightened. It was an executive efficiency recommendation. Owen looked at him. "It removed the designer attribution." Logan closed his eyes briefly, not from shock, but from recognition. Some losses hurt less because they are new and more because they finally have a witness. Sophie slipped her hand into his. Victoria looked from the report to the old silver car, then to the father and daughter standing in the middle of her luxury showroom. "Mr. Harper," she said, softer now, "were you the lead designer?" Logan looked at Sophie before he answered. "I was. Then my wife died, and Title stopped knowing how to get my little girl to school." No one laughed. Not a salesman. Not a guest. Not Preston. Beneath the open hood, the hand-built frame waited in silence, and for the first time, the room understood that the old car had not come there asking to be admired. It had come carrying a name someone tried to erase. Preston Vale's silence did not last long. Men who build their lives on polished control rarely surrender to truth the first time it enters the room. He stepped closer to Victoria Lane, lowering his voice as though professionalism could still save him. "Mississippi Lane, I strongly advise you not to accept this man's story at face value. If he admits he was connected to H-17, then we have a potential intellectual property issue standing in the middle of our showroom." Logan Harper did not react. Sophie did. Her hand tightened around his. Owen Fletcher looked up from the tablet. "Preston, the metadata can settle this." "Metadata can be manipulated," Preston said quickly. "So can sympathy." The word hung there, cold and ugly. Victoria's eyes narrowed. "Careful." Preston lifted both hands. "I am being careful." He arrives in a homemade vehicle built around company architecture, asks for a restricted part, creates a public scene, then produces a child's notebook and a tragic backstory. That is not innocence. That is leverage. A murmur moved through the showroom. Sophie's face went pale. Logan felt it before he saw it, the small collapse of a child hearing strangers turn her family into a scheme. He knelt beside her again, right there on the spotless stone floor between cars worth more than his whole street. Look at me, sophomore. Her eyes were wet. Did we do something wrong? Logan shook his head slowly. No, then why does he keep saying that? Logan brushed a strand of hair from her face. Because some people are more afraid of truth than they are of being unkind. Preston exhaled sharply. This is exactly the performance I mean. Logan stood, but his voice stayed low. You can call me poor. You can call my car ugly. But you do not get to make my daughter feel like honesty is a trick. The room went quiet, not because he shouted, but because he did not. Victoria turned to security near the entrance. No one touches the car. Preston stiffened. Mississippi Lane. No one, she repeated. Then she looked at Owen. Pull the original acquisition records. Not the internal summaries. The raw transfer files, design timestamps, serial registry, and attribution logs. Owen nodded and moved quickly to a workstation. Preston stepped toward him. Those files require legal review. Victoria's answer came sharp and calm. Then consider this review overdue. Logan reached into the passenger side of Silver and opened the small access panel beneath the dashboard. He removed the metal plate Sophie had never fully understood and placed it on a microfiber cloth on the showroom desk. H-17 prototype, built by L. Harper. Owen glanced over and froze. That serial plate should not exist unless this is the first rolling build. Preston's expression tightened. Victoria leaned closer to the plate, then to the exposed chassis, then to Logan's quiet face. The old silver car was no longer a customer nuisance. It was a witness. And for the first time, Preston Vale looked less like a manager protecting a brand and more like a man standing between a stolen name and the person it belonged to. Owen Fletcher connected to the archive terminal while the showroom waited beneath a silence that had stopped feeling luxurious. The glass walls reflected rows of polished cars, employees standing still with tablets in their hands, and Logan Harper's old silver vehicle sitting in the middle of the floor like a question nobody could push outside anymore. Preston Vale watched the screen from 3 steps away, his jaw tight, his voice measured. Before anyone misreads old records, I want it noted that any unauthorized prototype in this building could expose Lane Sterling Motors to serious liability. Victoria Lane did not look at him. Noted. Logan stood beside Sophie, one hand resting lightly near her shoulder, his other hand empty. No folder. No lawyer. No dramatic speech. Just a father, a child, and a car the room had called junk before learning it might be history. Owen opened the raw transfer files. The first image showed the H-17 chassis blueprint, blurred on the screen but clear enough in structure to match the old silver car's front geometry. The date stamp was years after the sketch in Sophie's notebook. Then Owen opened the serial registry. The room seemed to lean forward as one body. The serial plate on Logan's car matched the earliest rolling prototype designation. Owen swallowed. This is the first build. Preston snapped, or a copied plate. Logan did not answer. Victoria did. Keep going. Owen opened the attribution log. For a moment, the screen glow painted everyone's face pale. Original designer field. Removed. Replacement classification. Unmarketable scrap. Approval authority. Preston Vale. The showroom did not gasp. It simply stopped breathing. Sophie looked from the screen to Preston, then to her father. He erased you. Logan's face softened before his voice did. He erased a line, sweetheart. Not me. Preston turned sharply. That project would have bankrupted the division. I made a business decision. Victoria stepped closer to him, her voice low enough to make every word heavier. You removed the designer's name, buried the first build, and let my company profit from the architecture while calling the man who made it a thief. Preston's polished expression cracked at the edges. He abandoned the industry. Logan finally looked at him. No. I chose my daughter. That sentence landed harder than accusation because it asked for no applause. Owen looked toward the old silver car. Mississippi Lane, there is one more way to verify it. If the adaptive system is original, the chassis should self-balance under low-speed load transfer. No later copy ever replicated that without software drift. Victoria turned to Logan. Will it still run? Logan glanced at Sophie. She nodded, small but brave. Silver runs, he said. She just came here for a sensor. For once, no one laughed. Victoria Lane ordered the showroom doors closed, not to trap anyone, but to protect the truth from being moved, touched, or polished into another excuse. Employees stepped back from the old silver car. Customers stopped filming and lowered their phones when they saw her face. Owen Fletcher stood near the archive terminal with the raw transfer files still glowing on the screen, while Preston Vale remained beside the mezzanine stairs, quiet now, surrounded by the kind of silence a man cannot manage. Logan Harper opened the driver door and helped Sophie into the passenger seat. Buckle up, Soph, he said gently. She nodded, still holding her notebook, her eyes bright with fear and pride at the same time. Logan slid behind the wheel. The cabin smelled faintly of worn leather, solder, old rain, and the strawberry hand sanitizer Sophie kept in the cup holder. He turned the key. For half a second, the showroom held its breath. Then silver came alive with a low, smooth sound that did not belong to junk, salvage, or shame. It sounded like patience with an engine. Owen stepped closer, watching the front suspension. Low-speed load transfer, he said quietly. Victoria stood beside the car with her arms at her sides now, no longer folded, no longer guarded. Proceed slowly, Mr. Harper. Logan eased the car forward across the polished stone floor. No roar. No drama. Just a steady roll between million-dollar vehicles that suddenly seemed less impressive than the old machine they had mocked. As silver crossed a slight floor transition near the showroom center, the chassis dipped, adjusted, and leveled itself with a grace so subtle that only the people who knew what to watch for understood how impossible it was. Owen's face changed completely. There, he whispered. The original adaptive balance curve. Preston tried to speak, but no sentence formed. The car moved another 10 feet, then stopped perfectly beside the glass staircase. Sophie looked up at Logan. Did Silver do okay? Logan smiled, tired and soft. She did what she was built to do. Victoria turned to Owen. Say it clearly. Owen looked around the showroom, at the salesman who had laughed, at the customers who had stared, at Preston who had called the car stolen, and finally at Logan. This is not stolen, he said. This is not a replica. This is the original H-17 rolling prototype. The silence that followed was deeper than applause. It reached every corner of Lane Sterling Motors, from the espresso bar to the mezzanine, from the polished cars to the scratched silver one now idling calmly in the center of the room. Logan did not look around to enjoy it. He only looked at Sophie, because the only witness he had ever truly needed was the little girl who had believed the car had a heart before the world admitted it had a name. Victoria Lane stood beside the idling silver car for a long moment before she spoke. The showroom that had laughed at Logan Harper only minutes earlier now felt too quiet for polished floors and expensive glass. Salesmen lowered their eyes. Customers stepped back from their phones. Owen Fletcher remained near the archive terminal, one hand resting on the tablet that had finally returned Logan's name to the room. Preston Vale stood by the mezzanine stairs, pale and still, the authority in his suit no longer able to cover what the records had shown. Victoria turned toward Logan and Sophie. "Mr. Harper," she said, and this time the name carried weight, "I owe you and your daughter an apology." Logan did not answer right away. He shut off Silver, and the sudden absence of its engine made the silence feel even larger. Sophie sat in the passenger seat with her notebook against her knees, looking at the people who had called her father's car junk, then at the woman who now stood before him with humbled eyes. Victoria continued, "This company used your work, removed your attribution, and allowed you to be treated as if you were the one stealing from us. That ends today." Preston stepped forward. "Victoria, this requires legal context." She did not look at him. "You will be suspended pending an independent review of the H-17 records, the attribution removal, and your conduct in this showroom." No one defended him. Not one person. The quiet did what punishment could not. It made him feel the room he had tried to control without raising a voice. Victoria looked back at Logan. "Lane Sterling will restore your name to the H-17 project. Publicly. And if you are willing, I would like to offer you an independent consulting agreement. Your garage remains yours. Your schedule remains yours. Your daughter remains first." Logan looked through the glass doors toward the parking lot, where evening light reflected on Silver's scratched fender. For years, he had lived without titles because titles could not pack lunches, warm the car on cold mornings, or sit beside a child missing her mother. "I do not need a showroom to call me brilliant," he said quietly. "I need my daughter to know her father did not lie about what he built." Victoria nodded. "Then that is the first thing we correct." Sophie climbed out and walked to Logan, slipping her hand into his. "Daddy, are we still going on the school trip?" Logan smiled down at her. "Tomorrow morning." "In Silver?" "In Silver." She looked at the old car with relief so pure that even the showroom seemed to soften around it. Victoria stepped aside as Logan opened the passenger door for Sophie. Preston was gone now, escorted not by drama, but by consequence. Owen stood near the car and gave Logan a respectful nod. Logan returned it, then slid behind the wheel. Silver rolled slowly toward the exit, past the luxury cars that had once made it look poor, past the employees who no longer laughed, past the glass staircase where the question had first been asked. Sophie placed her hand on the dashboard. "You did not build it to impress them, did you?" Logan looked at the road beyond the showroom doors, where dusk waited like a promise. "No, sweetheart," he said. "I built it so you would know that even broken things can carry us home." And when Silver disappeared into the Ohio evening, the showroom stayed silent, not because the old car was gone, but because dignity had driven out with it.